All right. So we've got these things called narrative frames that we keep talking about. We've talked about that for the last, here we go. Can you all see that? What do we mean by changing the narrative? We've had so many guests. Every one of our sessions so far, we've been so grateful to have folks join us and talk about what they're doing to change the narrative around the kinds of work that we do, from charity to solidarity. And it is really about, for us, the shifting of consciousness and the shifting of values. And you'll see there, this is our typical charitable narrative frame. Someone is sad. Someone doesn't have what they need. A benefactor arrives with this beautiful gift of their generosity, and now everything's solved. And we communicators in international NGOs, foundations, throughout our sector have been part of making that happen. We've been part of building that narrative. And now we're at a moment where we need to challenge that in a deep way. I think there's so many signs of that, of why that's necessary in this moment. And so today, Joanne and I decided we wanted to just invite people in to that conversation, but in a really grounded way, in a really pragmatic way. Not theoretical, but how day to day are we tackling some of these things within our organizations? Sorry, let me get out of this. So we thought we'd start today with a little bit of inspiration. One of the things that we talked about when we put this group together, this monthly group together, was that we wanted to be able to share things that would also inspire us to tell the story differently. And so I'm going to turn it over to Joanne. We really, as communicators, need to stay fresh, and we need to also infuse our own creativity to bring a different kind of narrative to the table. And so we wanted to kind of kick that off. Joanna's going to share, I'm going to share, and then that's how we will do introductions today. We will ask all of you for something that's been inspiring you lately. So just put that in the back of your mind as Joanne gives us a welcome. Thanks, Joanne.
Thanks, Jennifer. It's so nice to see new faces, some returning faces. You're all very welcome to this space. And just like Jennifer mentioned, we're kicking off by sharing things which have, sort of stirred our souls and just inspired us to think differently about issues that we're trying to change, or issues that, we just want to bring change into. And the first one that I want to share is, I came across an article which I'm going to I came across an article that I'm going to share also in the chat, and it's an exhibition by an Italian photographer. She's called Rosalina Ramistella, and she was basically documenting stories of refugees and asylum seekers in Sicily, and she chose to do it differently by using a thermal imaging camera. And when she was asking their questions, the refugees and the asylum seekers, just questions about their lives, the responses that she was capturing, was not just verbal, but it was also sort of how the colors were changing in the way that they were responding. And because of this kind of photography, she's basically trying to capture the individuality of every refugee and every asylum seeker. And I thought that's such a nice way of showing how universal our emotions are as human beings, irrespective of being a refugee or an asylum seeker or a communicator in a big NGO. But our emotions really capture our universal essence. Yeah, and I know Jennifer also has one before we move on to everyone else. Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, well, whether I like it or not, I'm a poet before I'm anything else. And one of the magazines. It's a magazine. It's an old-fashioned magazine. It comes out in print once a year, but it also has online presence, and I'll put the link in as well. It's called Emergence Magazine, and it's one of those things right now that if I want writing that like really has to it, I just go there. And I know that I will find something that is worth reading, right? As communicators, I feel like I'm often in this Twitterverse, in this IG world that is just consumption like candy. And this feels like a whole meal every time. And it feels very nourishing as a platform. And I think we have the opportunity to do both of these things. And I think probably part of narrative change, we have to pay attention to, from the meal to the candy. And that's one of our deep challenges at this moment. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to put into the chat, and we're going to invite everyone to do introductions via the chat. We'd love to hear all of your voices, but of course we know that if we do that, our hour will be over much too quickly. But know that we see you and we welcome you. So if you could share in the chat who you are, where you are in the world, and what has stirred your soul lately. It could be anything. It could be the laughter of your child. It could be a piece of art or music. It could be anything. Maybe it's a walk in the woods. Whatever it is, if you would share that in the chat, we'd be really grateful. Just to
Absolutely.
get who is here.
Yeah. Well, while you're doing that in the chat, I'll just quickly go through the aims of our session today, which are pretty much constant for all the other sessions that we've also had. You know, we want this space to offer us an opportunity to connect to each other and to build a community where we all feel supported in bringing in change, bringing in that narrative change that we want to see in the work that we're doing. And also what we're going to do a little bit differently today is that we're going to ask you to join in groups of 3 so that you can meet at least 2 other people who are in this meeting today. And like Jennifer mentioned, this is again an opt-in, opt-out arrangement. So feel free not to join the breakout room when we give you the prompt. But we're going to make sure that this time is very well structured. And what we're going to do is we're going to harvest some of the wisdom, the knowledge and the ideas and some of the practical examples which the groups are going to come up with in terms of how we can help to shift the global dev narratives from charity to solidarity. Yeah. We also have a few ideas which guide us as a group, but those are quite long. So we're going to paste those in the chat as we go on. But yeah, I think we're just going to jump straight into the small groups discussion. And so this is how it's going to work. Jennifer's doing the technical bit of it. So she's going to sort of break everybody up into groups of 3, and we're each going to have 15 minutes in total in the groups to discuss, the questions. So I'm going to post the questions, but no, first let me read the questions. I think it helps, when I read the questions and then I put them in the chat. So the first question is, in the groups, you're going to introduce yourselves, who you are, and share what you're working on at the moment. Think about, or maybe something that you're even thinking about right now, maybe out of the examples which you have already shared even in the chat, or the examples that you're reading from others, there's something that you're thinking about at the moment. And then the second question is, what's the most important narrative that you're trying to change in your organization? Or it could be also in your life. We know this is the year of recalibrating and sort of adapting new habits and letting go of new habits. So it could also be something that you're working towards. And then the last part, the last question is, if you could do away with one problematic word or phrase, you know, in global development, what would it be and why that particular word? Yeah. I'm just going to put those in the chat. Or did I see Jennifer? No, not yet. Okay. This one.
I just wanted to let people offer their introductions. So
Oh, yes.
we read
Okay.
through all the people that are here. So I feel very inspired already by everything everyone's sharing. I appreciate this a lot, so much. Thanks. Oh yeah, Christine Prentice is
Oh, wow.
so many beautiful things here. So thank you. So yes, we're gonna do some introductions, the narrative that's near and dear to your heart, and a word that you would do away with, word or phrase
Yeah.
you would do away with and never use, utter again. Okay. So we're gonna do 7 breakout rooms. That'll be 3 people each. Please feel free to join and introduce yourself and follow all the questions. We will give you a good 15 minutes, so there's plenty of time to actually get to know each other. Just trust that these are your people
Yeah.
and that we're all here and ready to connect. So you'll receive an invitation now, as well as reminders when it's time to break out. All right, thank you. Hi, Katie.
Good morning.
Welcome. We
Thanks.
actually just went into small groups. Would you like to join one?
What are the topics? What are we discussing today?
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm like,
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Let me tell you what I'm inviting you to. We're just doing introductions, getting to know people. They're groups of 3.
mhm.
And one of the first question is, what's the most important narrative you're trying to change in your organization?
Okay.
And if there's one problematic word or phrase that you would like to never see or use again,
Hmm.
what is that and why?
Yeah.
So it should be sort of fun and juicy.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. I would love to join one if
Okay,
possible.
I'm just gonna add you into then room 7. Hold on one second.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, should have the invite now. Marianne. Hmm. Welcome back. Wait for a few more. There we go. Welcome back. It was positive and good to connect.
Ah,
See you.
cut off. That's okay.
It's always tough. But so good to see so many faces. I hope you were able to have some great conversations. I'll put in the chat and invite you to share in the chat if there's any commonalities or themes or similarities that really resonated in your small group. Questions, themes emerging, please just let us know in the chat. And now we're going to take this moment to take this conversation and bump it up a little bit, and to really even harvest the great ideas and knowledge and wisdom that exists within this group right now when it comes to narrative, something as big as narrative change, right, which happens at a societal level. Thank you, Deepa. Let's get done with empowerment. I'm with you 1000%. I have power. You have power. Everybody has power. Can we just agree on that now? And that's what we're actually going to talk about next. So I'm just going to put some slides up to frame the next bit, and then we'll do our harvest. Here we go. Desktop 2. That's what I really want to share. Nope, that's not. Can you see the work-life ecosystem, everybody? Yeah? Okay, great. So this is something that I'm sharing with all of you because I feel like it's one of those things that in the charitable narrative gets really messy really quickly, and we don't delineate our role. And when it comes to something, again, as big as a narrative shift at a society level, it's really important to be precise about what we can do and what we cannot do, and what is in our realm of control, influence, and to actually make some shifts. So you'll see here that under self, that is obviously where we have the most control, but it is limited by the awareness we have of ourselves. And I will say that at the self level, this is all about our choices and managing ourselves. And what we can manage is 3 things: our language, our emotions, we can manage our emotions, and we can manage our own bodies. And so that is really where we think about at your role, at your positional power within your organization. What is the thing that you really can make choices around is someplace where we should spend some time thinking, because it will be different depending on who you are or where you are in an organization, right? That second level then is influence, the interpersonal. This is about the network of relationships around you. And that's where it's even defined. And I think this key to influence is really about understanding the human condition. I think it's about understanding authority. It's about understanding communication skills and our skills at even relationship building. And then finally, here's the domain that we say we are really impacting as an organization. We are at that furthest level of concern, at that society level, a global level. This is all the things that we're aware of in life, and it's often dictated by politics, culture, religion, economics, anything. Obviously, we have an interest in all of those things, but they are far from that locus of control. So in order to harvest what we know about each of these levels today, we're going to ask a question for each of these levels, and then we're going to use the wonderful tool of Post-it notes in a Google Doc, which if you've never done, don't worry, we'll talk you through it. But we're going to ask 3 questions. The first question is, what is a specific word choice or an edit that could help shift global dev from charity to solidarity? And that includes that thing that you never want to use the word empower again. That is an example of what is under your domain of control. The interpersonal then becomes our specific practices that we do within our communications teams. These are our day-to-day decisions about what can help shift the narrative. And then we have obviously these long-term goals as well at that external environment level. And that's where we can get into some communication strategies as an organization about how we do that. So, now we're going to harvest. And the way that we do this, I'm just going to stop share for a second. The way that we do this is we get on the Google. I'm going to put it in. I sound like an old lady right now. We're going to do the Google, but I'm going to put it in the chat right now. It is an open document that you all should be able to edit. And so I invite you to open that document right now and go to slide number 6. I'm also going to broadcast this so you can all see it. But just to give you a sense of the steps here, if you've never done this, don't worry, we can hold your hand. All that you do really is click on one of those Post-it notes, click on the colored squares there, and you can immediately start typing. And you can even fill in as many as you want. Maybe you have multiple ideas about specific word choices you'd like to change. And when you've done that, and when you've finished, if you do read something that resonates with you a lot, and you're like, yes, that one, you can take an X from the bottom right-hand corner, and you can add it to that Post-it. So I'm just going to give us some time to fill this out and just behold our glorious wisdom. Oh, yes, I'm nodding. I'm definitely nodding. Mm. You know what I need, oh yeah, there we go. I didn't think I saw capacity building. There it is, thank goodness. And when you're ready and you've added your squares, or sorry, your X's, go ahead and hop on to slides 7 and 8. And so those are going to continue to get us through that to the interpersonal and then the concern. Take about 4 or 5 more minutes. Mm. There's some great stuff that we can get specific about when it comes to practice, and I'm really excited by that. I have this pragmatic side of myself that just gets super annoyed when we talk about theory and ideas all day long. So I'm just like, my little soul is delighting in all of these practices that we're claiming and naming in this moment, because each one of these could be its own global dev comms hour. But amazing, amazing work. Let's move to the last slide. I know there's always more. There's always more. But then how does that bubble up to this bigger contribution we can make as organizations? Oh, yes, be transparent about power. Donor education, yes. More meals and less candy. I should write that down. Right. this one. Stop telling partner stories just to have stories to tell. Love it. Oh, there's so much. I'm going to stop the share now, but please feel free to keep filling in and offering up your insights and your ideas. I'm reveling in the gloriousness of the knowledge and the wisdom we hold in this group, and that we can share among this group. This is literally why we wanted to be able to bring people together, not just to bring in speakers to share their experience, but to really connect to our own and celebrate it with this within our meeting and continue to build on it each month. And so just really having a moment of gratitude for offering these insights to each other in this moment too. So with our last few minutes, I just really want to open up. We've never kept this to an hour yet, because we've always had guests that are just beyond brilliant that we want to keep talking to. And we don't have to turn off at the hour either now, but I just wanted to open up and ask folks, what's been your experience of this harvest of knowledge? What emerging observations or questions or insights are you having? Thanks, Jill. Glad you were here. But feel free. Jan,
Always hard to start, and it's
please.
going to be a bit open-ended, but I guess these conversations are giving me much more optimism and hope that that shift in the narrative will come. But I keep questioning my place in it and how I engage, for want of a better term, with this whole dynamic, particularly in my place in the UK and wanting to do more work in Ghana. And there are just so many things that come up from a professional and a personal perspective that I'm trying to navigate at the moment, but it's really heartening to be able to share in this way.
I'm so glad, Constance, thanks. And can you say, or would you like to say more about your positionality within your organization and what role you have currently?
Sure. So I design and run challenge prizes, and so we identify social issues or have clients that donors want to tackle particular issues, and then we try and identify where innovation might be able to happen in that. And I'm using innovation in the broadest sense because I'm very conscious of the buzz term of new and shiny and fresh, but actually about, are there alternative models of business or service or engagement with community? And those are all areas for innovation. So looking at that and then supporting innovators who have solutions that we think we can support and help them disseminate more freely. But even in articulating that, there are so many things that make me just cringe in terms of terminology and language and how I'm framing it. And does it, it's kind of a constant thing of, well, how do you approach that in a way that's that has integrity and that really kind of speaks to shifting the narrative and then demonstrates that through follow-up action. And I'm grappling with a lot of those tensions, particularly, as I say, being an organization based in the UK and doing work in other areas of the world that we're not directly connected to. So, yeah.
Right. I see lots of nodding heads. It is the question, and it's why we even presented this idea of what's the self, the interpersonal, and the external environment. And the other nuance to add to that simple graphic is that we're all part of an ecosystem, that we're not just one organization, we're part of an ecosystem of organizations that are all focused on change and may or may not have the same values or ideas about how that changes. And in the meantime, you've got this general public and we all have a different part of that public. And so that's why I was really excited to see donor education being named as a strategy, because depending on who your donor base is, those donors will have different, they will be on different parts of the journey themselves, right? It is very hard, I'm sure, to go into a Wall Street or a financial, Times kind of situation and not talk about innovation and global development, right?
Yeah.
So there's this both and of the thing that also makes it really tricky. But the word that you said, Constance, that really like resonated with me was, how do we be in integrity with the way we communicate from our own sense of self? And that feels really resonant to me. So thank you. Yeah, who else wants to share?
And possible.
Go ahead.
So I think one of the things that is like coming up to me most in this whole discussion is like, still we work with community-led organization, and it's just like so glaringly obvious to me that like they're not in this conversation, and so like I'm always battling with, like, they're busy doing their work, doing their projects, and it's part of my job to promote what they're doing and get them attention and get them funding and all of those things. But we also have a large like activism side, and I think sometimes I'm not always sure that even our partners are like necessarily on board with the things that we're talking about and the change that we're trying to create. I can even hear some of them in my head being like, "You're overthinking everything. Just relax. It's all good." Blah blah blah, like those kinds of things. And I guess I'm just thinking about how to, like, who is the audience that we need to be speaking to and getting involved in these conversations, and when we have them, and like how can I bring some of the comms members of our partners organizations like in here, and like how much are they already knowledgeable about these topics, or is it going to be something that's totally like, I don't know, like westernized in itself. I don't know if that's the right word, but that's something that I keep thinking about.
Yeah. And in recognition that we have I just wrote this down on the comm strategy piece. We have a global audience, even if we're only making content for our donor base. And so the way I think about integrity with that is, if some of the people I'm working with were to read the thing that I've written, would they see themselves or not? And that's my little litmus test. And I get it wrong sometimes. And so then we have to work on consent and all these other aspects of comms practice to bring that into alignment. But I'm with you, like we also had partners, for internally hemmed and hawed. When I was at Thousand Currents, we hemmed and hawed for a long time about, should we burden our partners with our content and vice versa? And so we finally just asked them, and they said, "Go, we trust you. You can tell our story." I would not recommend that for many organizations, however, because the relationships and the trust are not there, particularly with the bigger the INGO, or the bigger the foundation, or the bigger the money even. So these are all the really nuanced aspects of this. Yeah. I just want to mark that it is at the hour, and some people have already had to jump off, but if people want to stay on, Joanne and I are also very happy to stay on and keep talking. Yeah, thanks. Let's see, we've got a input here from Angelica. Thanks. In another session, it would be great to do the same exercise we just did, but then come up with new and better terms. Ooh, I love that. Like, how do we describe this with different kinds of words. I would love that. And alternative language, yeah, it's such a big question, and it usually involves more words, not less words. So it makes it even trickier, but I love that suggestion. Thanks, Angelica.
I have a cynical thought or question.
Go ahead.
I hate to leave us on this note, but I love having these conversations, but every time I start scratching the surface with comms, or I'll turn on my video so that I'm not so mysterious here. I ultimately fall down a rabbit hole of just thinking, like, what if the discussions we're having right now, we all ultimately conclude that development work in and of itself is inherently oppressive, and that is what I always wind up concluding on a personal level. And I'm like, I'm just gonna quit development work. And I don't know if anyone else, if that resonates with anyone, just being like, yeah, if I really start following this train of thought, what I'm doing is inherently oppressive, and I just don't belong. Development shouldn't exist in and of itself, period. But that's just a query. I'm just wondering if anyone else grapples with that.
I saw lots of nodding heads, Katie, and I'm going to offer 2 ideas in this moment that have helped me, because absolutely existential questions are an inevitable part of this work. And if you're not asking those big, deep questions, then I'm really worried about you. Then I know you're doing harm. So the questions themselves, we can just name them as all good, which when we are trained to be linear and conclusive, that feels strange, but I'm telling you the questions are good. I'm also going to share with you that if you jumped to another sector and like left nonprofit world alone, you would find the same issues, because we are living in a world that has been shaped by colonization, and the locus of control and who gets access to resources is still defined by white male human supremacy. It doesn't matter where you go, unfortunately. So we actually don't get to escape this. And that's what my mentors have always sort of ushered in for me, which is like, you thinking you get to opt out is white supremacy thinking. And I was like, ouch, and yes, ouch, and yes, right? We actually don't get to opt out. And so that's what makes that, like, what is actually under my control or influence really important. And that work gets done in relationships, and that's why we stay in it with people, even the people that frustrate us and even harm us sometimes, right? So I just offer all of that for more food for thought for every one of us, including myself. So it's not a negative way to end the conversation at all. I think it's right where we should be. It's right where we should be. That's the time we're in. These deep, deep questions, for sure. And actually, you joined us late, Katie, but we talked in the beginning about places that we're finding inspiration right now, places like content that's like really, or experiences that are giving us juice to keep going, because it's actually super important to steady ourselves for the long haul that is not just narrative change, but change in general.
Well, and that gives that, your response gives me juice right now, because I think sometimes when I fall down that rabbit hole of, I should just quit, that attitude is exactly what you were pointing out, is quickly conflated with white guilt. Of course, I have the ultimate privilege of being able to say, like, F this, I'm just gonna quit, and so I really appreciate when colleagues can point that out. Like, don't succumb to your white guilt, so thank you for that.
We gotcha.
Can I come in on, sorry.
Please, Manju, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, so for the person, I think, Katie, for raising that, one thing that I'm reminded of, so I'm just going to turn my camera on for a second. So, hi everyone, I'm Manju. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely this, so a friend of mine talks about it like this, that many of us have skin in the game. There's really no choice, right? And the kind of either or thinking is also something that has come from Western thinking. And rather than thinking, do I have to do this through like the Harvard business model, or do I have to abandon that completely and go to something else like, I don't know, the Seva model or Ubuntu? This is not about inclusion, right? This is about, how do we bring all of these things together? I know that for me anyway, as a woman of color, I'm not saying, I have to be center stage and that everybody else has to kind of give up of what they have. But I'm saying, hey, share it. Let's make this fairer. I mean, and I know that my colleagues of color would probably kind of agree with that. We're not talking about throwing everything away, but we're thinking about what we're asking for is equity and access. So I'm saying this as a South Asian woman, as a brown woman, but I'm also saying this as someone who's in the sector, right? That it's important that we don't go for this either or thinking, which in itself I think is it has a stronghold, in the culture of organizations. And I'm also reminded of Arundhati Roy, who says, I think she calls it a new day is coming, or and I can, yeah, I'm forgetting it now.
Yes.
So and also that when we talk about anti-racism, it is a redistributive thing. It is about redistributing power. So yes, some people will have to give up power.
Mm. And part of, thank you so much, Manju, for that. I really appreciate that. And I will also just share that giving up power, we just have to name it, and we have to name it in the context, as you're saying, of more fair, more accessible, and more possible. Because here's the thing, capitalism has often narrowed our idea of what even could be. And so this notion of a pluralistic society has been really couched in utopic terms, right? Kumbaya, this is where we're going someday. And I feel like, no, our job, especially in our sector, is to say, it is now. No, it is now that we do this. It is in our everyday that we can do this. And to be really clear about that and really and that's why releasing charitable narratives is super important to me, because the more we uphold this idea that we are saving anyone or that we are superior to anyone, we delay that day from coming. We are actually part of a deep problem if that's the narrative frames we're using. We are delaying what could be. So, ooh, Deepa, thank you for that quote. I want to read it out to folks. A quote from Toni Morrison. When you get these jobs that you have been so brilliantly trained for, just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have power, then your job is to empower someone else. And of course, since we're not using empower, Deepa says, if you have some power, then redistribute it. Put the privilege to good use. I love that. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, anybody else? It feels like a lovely place to close, but I don't want to cut anyone off. And if everyone is feeling something burning in them, I'd love to hear as well.
I just wanted to quickly express gratitude for the group and noticing how much participation in this group mirrors the what we have control of, button chair, show up, how we influence, we're influencing each other to create the show up now, how we think it needs to do. And then how the comms, the changing the narrative, what we've heard from all of the speakers prior to this is I can't change the narrative, but I have to contribute to changing the narrative. And so we all show up here to try to coordinate our little piece to like shove that outer layer. And so much, I just am so grateful to be in community with you guys, to be held in that, to be pushed and shaped, and to have us be mirroring how we know that the change works here even within our group. So thank you.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, thanks so much, Anna, for that. I mean, it's so interesting that you just said that, because one of the things that stood out for me when we were doing the harvesting was the comment that, we should, as colleagues, even in our workplaces, challenge each other to increase our level of self-awareness. And you just said that here, and I hope that this is also something that you're going to feel bold enough to carry out, in your workplaces. And I'm just so happy that this can be sort of a fountain where you tank up on that kind of energy. And when you're at work, you just feel like, I feel like saying this, I'm going to say this right now, knowing that this is your place where you can come back and just report in a way and say, okay, it didn't work out, or, it went wrong. And we just kind of try and figure this out together here. So it's really good that you mentioned that. Yeah.
Amen. Okay. Jan, you want to close us out?
Yes. Yeah. I see some hands waving. Sure. Thank you so much, everybody, for your amazing participation. I mean, it's been such a wonderful session. And we would like to definitely invite you to the next one, which is going to happen on on the second Wednesday of every month. So the next one is on the 10th of March, and it's going to be at the same time exactly. And if you have any suggestions for guests that we could have in our upcoming sessions, you're very welcome to get in touch with us and let us know. And I'm just going to end by posting in the chat ways that you can support the Healing Solidarity Foundation, as Healing Solidarity Collective. I'm already giving it a foundation status.
Wish.
Maybe it's a sign of things to come. But thank you so much. We're so grateful for your time and your presence, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Yes, in all your fullness, in whatever state you're going to be in, we are ready to receive you, and we're ready to be on this journey together with you. So see you soon.
Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you.